What is up, guys? My name is Lex. We are still here in Texas tonight. We're playing on a live stream, the Lodge Live 5-5 uncapped. The game is going to be big. I'm buying it for $5,000, but I may add on depending on how big the game gets, and it should be fun. There's a lot of action players, a lot of straddles going on, so it's going to be good. Hope you guys like this video. Let's get right to it. Let's go. Welcome back to the vlog, guys. We are here in Round Rock, Texas, ready to play on a big live stream, 5-5 uncapped. I buy in for $5,000 and I get right into a super interesting hand. Literally the first hand of the stream, I look down at Ace King of Hearts. I raise it up to $30. The cutoff calls 30, the button calls 30, and now the action's on the small blind. The player in the small blind, his name is Jay Wynn. I've watched him play on the Dallas streams, the Texas Card House streams, and also the Lodge, so I know that he's a very solid player. He ends up putting in a 3-bet to $170. So now the action's back on me, and I don't think flatting here would be good given the fact that I have two other players behind me and I'm super deep, so I decide to put in that 4-bet. I raise it up to $450. Given the fact that I raised from the hijack and got a cutoff and button call, Jay Wynn's squeezing from the small blind range could be pretty wide here. It doesn't mean that he only has queens, kings, or aces. I know that he's a thinking player and he understands the game very well, so he could be squeezing here with a wide range of hands, not just queens, kings, or aces. So whenever I put in a 4-bet here, I'm trying to get value from all of his weaker aces, his suited Broadway cards, and also put a lot of pressure on his hands like queens, kings, and pocket jacks. He thinks for a little bit of time and decides to make the call for $450. First hand of the stream, 4-bet pot, going heads up here, which comes off ace high. So pretty great for me. I end up flopping top pair, top kicker. Jay Wynn checks it over to me, and I decide to put out a 1/3 pot size C-bet here. I make it $300. I bet smaller here, trying to get him to call with all of his pairs like jacks, queens, and kings, and also to keep him in here with his weaker aces like ace jack or ace queen suited. He thinks for a little bit of time and ends up making the call for $300, going to the turn in a pretty sizable pot, which is the king of spades, giving us top 2 pair. What an amazing turn card for us, but it's also harder now for us to get value from weaker hands like jacks and queens. If I bet, he's just going to fold those hands all the time. If he somehow has the last combination of pocket kings, he now made a set, but I am not going to check my top 2 pair here. Whenever he checks it over to me, I decide to put out a hefty, sizable bet of $1,250. After I made this bet, I was expecting him to fold fairly quickly here. Just because I have the board so locked up, it's kind of hard for him to have much on this board. But now he goes into the tank. He starts thinking for about 20 or 30 seconds and decides to make the call. So now I put him mostly on a hand like ace king for 2 pair as well, possibly ace 4 suited and ace queen and ace jack. Looking for a clean river, which we do get. It's an offsuit 6 with around $4,000 in the middle. Jay Wynn checks it over to me, and I think I basically have one option here. I don't think any other bet sizing would work. I decide to ship it all in. I go all in for around $3,000 with my top 2 pair. The first hand of the stream, I really would not like to get snap called here. That would mean he'd have a set, but luckily he goes into the tank, so I know I'm most likely good here. My adrenaline is pumping now. My heart is beating out of my chest. It's the very first hand of the stream. This is crazy. I was definitely not expecting this. Usually I can just kind of ease my way into the session, but we are all in our very first hand with top 2 pair. The dealer ends up counting out my chips. I have around $3,000, which is about the same stack that Jay Wynn has. He goes into the tank for probably a minute and a half or 2 minutes and decides to fold. He says he has ace queen and he makes a pretty tough laydown here. So we ended up getting value on the flop and on the turn, but no more on the river. It is always nice to start off the session with a big win. Now I'm up about $2,000, which is super nice. It kind of calms the nerves leading into the next hand, which I pick up another premium in the big blind.
On the dealer button, because of clearance, you mentioned that again for the folks.
Yeah, so small blind button bonus. So each hand, oh, Lexo Poker here waking up with the aces.
Oh my goodness.
He's going to juice it up. But small blind puts $25 every time onto the button. And if the small blind wins the hand, they get all the money that's currently stacked on the button. So a little bit of an incentive to play hands out of position.
Bones ends up raising it up to $40 on the button. There's a call in the small blind before. I look down at pocket rockets in the big blind. I make it $250 and he makes the call. I'm going to keep his hand blacked out so you can play the hand from my perspective. The board comes down pretty good for our hand. Deuce, 5, 6 with 2 spades. I do not have the ace of spades, so I decide to lead out here, putting in a c-bet of $350. I don't have any experience playing with Bones, but I know that he plays a lot on these big live streams, so he's definitely another competent player. He's a thinking player and understands the game very well. He's also fairly aggressive, but I don't see him getting out of line very often on the stream. So whenever he makes the call, I put him mostly on flush draws and pocket pairs. The turn card is pretty bad for us. It's the 3 of spades, bringing in the front door flush and bringing a one-liner straight to a 4. Definitely not the turn card we are looking to see here. Bones definitely has the range advantage here, having a lot more 4s in his range and also having a lot more flushes. I end up checking it over to him, and now he goes into the tank. He thinks for a while and puts out a very sizable bet. He bets out $900 into a $1,200 pot. I am put in my very first tough spot on the stream here. I have to decide whether I want to call or fold here, and knowing this player, if he is starting a bluff, he's not going to give up on the river, which means that I'll have to face a $900 bet on the turn, and then probably a $1,500 or $2,000 bet on the river. So it just doesn't seem good here with pocket aces. I obviously don't want to hero fold pocket aces and be wrong on stream and look stupid, but there's really not many bluffs he can have. He can have a hand like King Jack with the King of Spades, or Ace Queen with the Ace of Spades, but other than that, a lot of his hands he either has value with sets, 2 pairs, straights, or flushes, so I decide to let this one go, and it turns out it was a good fold. He had Jack 10 of Spades, so he turned a flush.
He's going to be looking at the monitors here and curious about that one, but turns out to be an excellent laydown as Bones did indeed have the flush, and the aces are cracked early.
We are now 1 for 1 on the stream, winning a big pot there with Ace King and then getting unlucky there with pocket aces. But now in this hand, J-Win raises to 40, DQ calls, Big Tony makes it 180, and I look down at pocket queens in the small blind. So I don't want to be flatting this 3-bet and going multi-way out of position here with pocket queens. So I decide to put in the cold 4-bet. I raise it up to $550 here with pocket queens. All these hands are happening within the first half an hour of the stream, which means that people don't know what I have yet. So it looks like I'm a crazy maniac, 3-betting, betting, and going all in. So I think my image is pretty good here. I think I can get called pretty light. But as you can see, Big Tony has a premium here. Ace King of Spades, he ends up making the call for $550. So going to the flop, which comes out all low cards, 9, 7, 5 with 2 hearts. I think Big Tony is going to have a lot of pocket pairs like 10s, jacks, queens, and maybe kings. I think that he would 5-bet aces and kings sometimes. He's going to have a lot of Broadway cards like ace queen suited, ace king suited, maybe king jack or king queen suited. So I put out a half pot size bet here. I make it $600. He pretty much snap calls me. The turn card is a beautiful queen with $2,400 in the middle. We end up turning top set in a 4-bet pot. Man, it just can't get any better on this hand. I think for a little bit of time, I don't want to check here and give free cards to hands like Ace King of Hearts or even Ace Jack of Hearts, so I decided to put out a $1,000 bet. If he has a hand like Pocket Kings, a flush draw, or maybe even Pocket Jacks, he might not believe me yet. He thinks for a little bit of time, and as you can see, he doesn't have anything at all, just 2 overcards, so he ends up making the fold, so we end up taking down a pretty sizable pot here with Pocket Queens. Only 30 minutes into the stream and I'm already up almost $3,000, so things are going good. Let's keep this rolling. We are rocking that 44% VPIP here. As you can see, DQ is playing 80% of hands, but I'm pretty sure he hasn't folded yet pre-flop. He ends up limping for $10. I look down at 6-5 of diamonds in later position. I raise it up to $75. Given the fact that DQ half the time doesn't even know what he has before he puts money in the pot, this is a pretty obvious raise. And if you guys can look there on the button, there's $250 on it. And I want to talk a little bit about what's going on here. We are playing a game here where the small blind puts $25 on the button every single hand, and only the small blind can win that money. It keeps escalating up and up and up until the small blind wins the hand. So this time there's $250 on the button, which means that the small blind is incentivized to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe take some high variance lines to try to win that money. So now in the small blind, Scarfzilla decides to 3-bet. He makes it $400. Given the fact that we are playing this game, you kind of have to realize that the small blind could have a pretty wide range here. So DQ decides to finally look at his cards, and he has an 8 and a 9 and decides that $400 sounds good to him. He makes the call, and given the fact that I'm in position super deep with both opponents, I end up making the call for $400. We're going here 3 ways with a pretty bloated pot already, which we end up flopping top pair and open-ended on 6-4-3 rainbow. The small blind decides to c-bet on this board. He puts out a $400 bet. DQ thinks for about 3 seconds and decides to call 400, so now the action's back on me and I'm in my first difficult spot of the hand. I have to decide whether I want to raise or just call. Raising here could be good because I can turn my hand into a semi-bluff, trying to put a lot of pressure on overpairs and just end the hand right away. But if I call, I am in position, I can hit one of my outs, and I could possibly have the best hand where I could just try to get the showdown here with the 6. So I ultimately decide to make the call for $400, so we're going 3 ways to the turn. The turn card doesn't help us, it's an offsuit jack, so we don't pick up any extra equity here. Now the small blind goes into the tank and decides to keep betting. He puts out a bet of $1,500. DQ pretty quickly folds, and now I have to feel like he's pretty strong here. He got 2 callers pre-flop, and then he got 2 callers on the flop, and he's continuing to bet here on the turn. The small blind is repping a range of pocket jacks, queens, kings, and aces, which is all hands that he can have whenever he 3-bets out of the small blind, bets that flop, and then continues here on the turn. However, he can still have some bluffs, like ace-high bluffs, king-high broadways, or queen-high broadways. Given the fact that this player is very aggressive and there's a small blind bounty on the button which could be leading to some of his aggression, I don't think I can fold just yet. I have some outs, either hitting a straight, a 2 pair, or even a 6 could be good, so I end up making the call for $1,500, going to the river, which is another jack. This pot is massive so far, $5,400 in the middle. Now the action's on the small blind. He thinks for probably around 30 seconds and decides to bet huge. He puts out a $3,500 bet here. This is such a nasty spot here, probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make in poker. I'm facing a huge bet, a $3,500 bet with 1 pair. My initial reaction was to call. I just didn't feel like he had much of anything at all here. I didn't think he'd be betting this big with just 1 single pair hand, but my hand looks a lot like a single pair hand as well. I just called on the flop, then I just called again on the turn. So he could put me on a hand like pocket 7s, 8s, or 9s, and he could be doing this with queens, kings, or aces, trying to go for max value and polarize his range here to having an overpair or nothing at all. This is when the stakes of the game start to get to you. This is a huge bet for me. I've never faced a $3,500 bet on the river. If I was a millionaire, I would just flick in the chip, but $3,500 is a lot for me to lose. If you guys remember, I posted a hand from the win in Vegas. I ended up calling a $3,000 bet with pocket aces, and I was wrong. So I don't really want to be calling huge river bets with just 1 pair of hands. So I end up tanking for about 2 minutes and decide to let this one go. I asked Scarfzilla if he would tell me what he had, and he told me I'd have to wait for 30 minutes to see on stream, and as you guys can see, he had nothing here. He had ace-high just blasting off, so if I would have made the call, it would have been the biggest win, the biggest pot of my life, so it's pretty tilting to see that. But what are you going to do? It's kind of hard to call there. $3,500 with just a 6. Moving on to the next hand. Moving right along here to the next hand, there's a $10 under the gun straddle-on. There is 5 callers for $10 before I look down in the big blind at pocket jacks. I decide to raise this one up. I make it $125, and looking back, I think I could be going a little bit bigger here. People do not like to fold in Texas, that is for sure, so I think $150 or even $175 would be fine. I end up getting 3 callers, going to the flop 4 ways, which comes ace, 5, deuce, not too great for us. The small blind checks. I end up checking it, and it checks all the way to DQ, who decides to put out a bet. He puts out a pretty sizable bet of $350. Whenever the small blind calls, I think it's a pretty easy fold here. Turns out DQ had top pair. We are just picking up a ton of premium hands here. Next up, pocket kings and the hijack raise of $75. Boots next to act puts in a 3-bet to $240. So far, Boots has not played many hands. I don't know much about this player. I do know that he plays a lot on these live streams, so he's pretty comfortable with these stakes. The action ends up folding all the way back around to me, and I have to decide, should I put in the 4-bet or just call? And given the fact that I've been super aggressive so far, 4-betting and 3-betting a lot, I decide to just call the $240. I want to put in the trap here, keep him in here with his weaker hands like pocket 10s, jacks, and queens, and see a flop. Heads up to a flop which comes out ace high, which is definitely not what we were wanting to see. I check it over to Boots, who puts out a pretty small C bet. He bets $125. Given the fact that I don't have the king of clubs, I'm going to make the call here and evaluate on the turn. With $750 in the middle, the turn card is the 10 of hearts. Doesn't help us at all, and also now we're losing to pocket 10s. I check it over to Boots, and he goes into the tank for like 30 to 45 seconds and decides to bet big. He puts out an $800 bet. We let this one go pretty quickly. Can't be calling an $800 bet with an ace on the board, and he ends up taking this one down. Moving along to the next hand here, DQ playing a ton of hands, almost 100% of his hands, raises it up to $130 from the hijack position. Bones makes the call from the cutoff. The button ends up making the call, and I look down in the big blind at Jack 10 of spades. A pretty playable hand. Suited connector here, so I end up making the call for $130. Going to the flop, which we end up flopping top pair. Jack 6-4 with one spade. It ends up checking all the way to Big Tony on the button, who puts out a $225 bet. I don't really have much of a choice here, but call, and everybody else folds. Heads up here to the turn, which is the 3 of spades, giving us a flush draw. I check it over to the button, and he checks back, so I think he has a middling pair below the jack. I don't think he'd be checking a jack on that turn, basically ever. So the river is an ace. Now I decide to lead out for thin value. I bet out $300 here. Trying to get called by pocket 9s, pocket 10s, and pocket 8s. Tony doesn't feel like calling there with pocket 9s. He tanks for about 5 seconds and shows me his cards and folds, so I end up taking down this pot. After that hand, I have about $5,400 in my stack. Started the day off with $5,000, so we're up $400 now. Definitely not as much as we were before, but we're still in the profit zone. Another great looking hand here. On the button, I look down at red pocket jacks. There's 4 limpers for $10 before I raise it up to $150. I make a joke that I only need 2 callers, and it turns out we end up getting 2 callers here, heading 3 ways to the flop. With $490 in the middle, we flop an overpair on 8-5-7 rainbow. It checks all the way to us, and given the fact that this board is super wet and connected, I'm a little bit worried here, but I do want to put out a protection / value bet, so I put out $200, and I get snap called in 2 spots. Going to the turn 3 ways in a pretty sizable pot already, it comes off the 9 of clubs. There's $1,100 in the middle, and this is not the card we are looking for. It's a 1-liner now to a 6, and this 9 can help my opponents with a lot of 2 pairs or even sets, so when it's checked to me, I decide to check this one back. Moving to the river, which is a 3 of clubs, brings a backdoor club draw. When my opponent's check to me, I think it's a little too thin here to bet with an overpair, so I decide to take the easy route, and I check this one back, and my pocket jacks are good, so we end up scooping a $1,100 pot, which puts us up about $1,000 on the session. Things are going pretty good so far, leading into the last hand of the night, which I'm going to play with my man DQ. He's been playing every single hand. He's great for the game, super fun guy. This one is going to get pretty wild. The last hand I play on stream here, these guys are straddle maniacs. The game is 5, 10, 20, 40 now, so I look down at ace queen of diamonds from under the gun +2, raise it up to $175. The action pretty quickly folds all the way to the small blind, and John ends up putting in $175 with queen jack offsuit. Now the action's on DQ in the big blind. His cards aren't reading, and I'm not even sure if he even knows what his cards are, but he likes to put in money blind anyway, so he makes the call for $175. Now the action's on Joe in the $40 straddle, and he makes the call too. These players are definitely not afraid to play some big pots at the lodge. We see a flop of 10-5-3 with 2 diamonds, end up flopping the nut flush draw. When the action checks to me, I go back and forth of c-betting or not, and given the fact that I am 3 ways, or actually 4 ways, and these players love to call, I decide to check this one back and try to realize some of my equity. The turn is pretty good for us. It's the queen of spades, now bringing 2 flush draws on the board, but now we have top pair, top kicker, and the nut flush draw. John, DQ, and Joe check it to me, so I'm going to put out a bet for value here. I put out a $400 bet. The small blind John ends up making the call for $400, and now the action's on DQ. He's looking around, a little disinterested. I'm expecting him to fold a lot of the time here, but he ends up taking a look back at his cards, and he does something I wasn't really expecting. He puts in a raise to $2,500, 5 purple chips going in the middle. Right when I see this $2,500 raise, my stomach drops. I feel like I'm going to throw up the barbecue dinner I just had 2 hours before. You can see by the look on my face I'm not too happy. I end up asking DQ, hey, do you know what your cards are? And he said, yes, I look this time. So now I have to decide, what should I do here with my top pair, top kicker, and the nut flush draw? I've only been playing with DQ for about 4 hours now, but I haven't seen him get too out of line with many big bluffs. He loves to play a ton of hands, but I haven't seen him get caught with many big bluffs, so I think he has a pretty strong hand like 2-pair or a set. However, my hand is super strong here. I have $6,000 in my stack. If I make the call, I'll have $4,000 remaining. If I end up making my diamond flush on the river, I could probably get a full double up. I end up tanking for about a minute here, and I decide to put in the call. I call $2,500, so we're going heads up here to the river. This pot is huge, over $6,000. I could really use a diamond one time. I'm praying to the poker gods, praying to the dealer. Come on, I need this money way more than DQ. I mean, look at that shirt. Who wears a shirt like that? Going to the river, which is the 9 of clubs. What the f? No diamond for us this time. Ended up missing our nut flush draw. Then DQ asks, how much do you have in your stack? Can I see? I end up lifting up my arms to show I have about $4,000 remaining. I'm hoping this is just a posture play and he checks it over to me and I can check back. But that's not the case. He ends up putting out a huge, sizable bet of $3,500.
Sticky flop. That's my guess.
So sick.
And we may never know. We may, if Lexo folds
He
here.
hates it. He hates it. Basically almost puts them all in. 3.5 to go. Lexo has a smidge over that. Lexo needs a barf bag. He's going to be in the blender here. A little summertime blender. 3.5. DQ with a smile. Poker and chili's all in, baby. Folds it. 10-5.
I told you.
Ooh,
I told you.
Laser.
10-5.
Laser reads, Rick. Good on you there.
I just felt.
I agreed on the 2-pair. I thought it was more of a queen.
I end up folding my ace-queen, and DQ shows 10-5 offsuit for 2-pair, which is going to win it. If it looks like I'm pretty frustrated here, it's because I am. I hate losing. I get on tilt super easily, especially when I'm up on a session, and then I end up losing my profit and ending up down. I'm always going to be real with you guys. I hate being fake, so if I am pissed off or frustrated, I'm going to show it. However, this has nothing to do with DQ's play. I love the fact that he's playing every single hand. He's great for the game, and he's also a super nice guy. I just hate losing. After this hand, I end up adding on another $10,000, so now I'm in the game for $15,000. This game is playing huge, so I want to have as much money as I can on the table. Unfortunately, I don't get any more playable hands for the last half an hour of the stream, but I do play off the stream. Now that the stream has ended here, I can end up filming at the table. I end up raising to $250 after DQ straddles to 75. I end up missing this flop and losing $250. The very next hand, DQ straddles again to $75. I look down at 6-7 of clubs in the cutoff position. I raise it up to $250 again. I end up c-betting a board and losing to DQ's second pair, so I lose another $500 in that pot. Next hand, there's an open to 75. DQ 3-bets to a 300. I look down at pocket queens and I end up making the call for 300. We go 3 ways to a low flop, which DQ ends up c-betting for around $500. We all make the call. The turn is an ace and the action checks all the way through. The river's a brick, and now the other opponent in the hand leads out for $2,000 and I end up folding. The last hand that I have recorded on this session, I end up looking down in the small blind with ace-5 of spades. There's a $75 open and a call. I 3-bet to $350 and they both make the call. So going 3 ways to the flop, which we totally miss on 10-9-4 with 2 hearts. I end up check folding on this board. As you guys can see, things are not going my way off stream either. I end up losing about $2,000 just because I cannot make a hand. I end up raising so big because the game is playing so big and just losing basically every pot. It's about 2:30 in the morning. My flight is in 5 hours, so I end up racking up my chips, heading to the cage and cashing out. Alright guys, we are back here in Miami. Let's go over my Lodge live stream results. So it was a pretty crazy swingy session. Ended up in the game for $5,000 at first. I had about an $8,000 stack on my high point, and then I lost that hand against Scarfzilla. I just couldn't make the call there with my 6. If I would have made that call, it would have been the biggest win, the biggest pot of my life. So that's pretty tilting that I was just one flick of the chip away from winning there. Ended up winning some small to medium-sized pots after that, and then I got into that huge pot there with DQ. Top pair, top kicker, nut flush draw versus his 2-pair, and we didn't end up winning that one. So I lost about $600 on the stream. After the stream, I added on for $10,000 because the game was playing so big, and as you guys saw, couldn't get too much going there. Lost a lot of hands, picked up some premiums, and couldn't win. So I lost about $2,000 total on Saturday night. If you guys are ever in the Round Rock area in Texas, go check out the Lodge. It was a lot of fun. The games were super action. The management was great, and the poker dealers were very good and professional, so make sure to go check them out. So as for me, I'm going to be back here in Miami now for a while. Not going to be traveling until probably October. I'm just going to be grinding poker and making videos for you. It's been about 5 months since I released my first video. February 15th of 2021 is when I released my first vlog. So within those 5 months, I'm almost at 20,000 subscribers, which is awesome. If I'm not there yet when you're watching this video, hit that subscribe button and get me to 20,000. I definitely appreciate all the comments, the likes, and everything like that. So I hope you guys like this video. And until next time, I'll see you.